By way of introduction, so my name is Ben Tibbets. Been working in the property industry now as a chartered surveyor for about over 20 years now. Historically, I've worked within large multinational chartered surveyors and also a PLC house builder in development land consultancy. Past 15 years, I've specialised in releasing development sites from complicated utility constraints and also advise on energy renewable matters such as large battery storage. So a chartered surveyors in 2015 called BTS, which we specialise in energy and infrastructure. I then set up a prop tech company called Landatic in 2018 as a development land portal for people within the industry. And then more recently, the Land Hero community app was set up at the start of 2023. Now, I think a lot of the stuff that we already kind of know about in terms of the affordable housing supply issues, with the lack of housing numbers being built in the UK. We also know a lot about the cost of living issues and also the increases year on year in homelessness. Derelict homes and empty spaces effectively become a blight on local communities. And from this, there are real concerns of antisocial behaviour, such as crime and vandalism. The tech revolution as well, and economic climate, has caused a number of firms and high street businesses sort of closing, often leaving redundant sites and properties, and often can scar the sort of our high streets and communities. Deterioration of urban environment can lead to fracturing communities and feelings of isolation among inhabitants. And we clearly need more investment into the sustainable urban areas that need it and have got the infrastructure there. These types of issues also result in devaluing a lot of neighbouring properties and detracting private investment. And with all this, there's significant well-being sort of implications. It's sort of possibly something that you've already seen and looked at in terms of here, and this is in terms of the long-term empty homes rise. Now, I've just picked this straight from Scottish Government website, and specifically just looked at the long-term empty homes. The graph shows, and I think it's the dotted line that you'll see. I mean, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it's the dotted line that's coming up from left to right, and you can see it's steadily increasing. Now we're about 46,000, I think I understand, as long-term empty homes. When you consider this against the average value of a home, again, taken from the Scottish website, I think they've got it down as about £180,000. This represents a potential value of about £8.3 billion worth of product, which is a huge amount of property which could be used for much needed temporary and permanent housing, which would fix so much of the issues that we have with homelessness and affordable housing. Now, understanding the amount of derelict and empty urban properties, I'm not just confining it just to completely empty homes, but I'm also looking a little bit in terms of the brownfield register. It's not easy to particularly understand in terms of the information that's got to go into the brownfield register. Now, by way of example, you probably can't really read a lot of the text. I mean, that's sort of done a little bit on purpose because actually it shows how hard and how much information local authorities in terms of what they've got to submit. There's been no update on this since 2022, and I mean, as you'll see there, some of the numbers, there was about 3,000 sites were identified, works out to be about 9,500 hectares, when if you're working out a very, very basic average of 35 dwellings per hectare, which I mean in urban environments would be extremely low, that's about over 300,000 homes. Yeah, why you're probably struggling to read the text is, as I said before, there's almost too much information being asked of local authorities. I know you battle a lot with money, time, and resource. And then on top of this, to explain that summary, there's a 34-page document explaining what the summary above means and what is needed. So it's just more information in terms of what's required. The criteria not only relates to location, but the site must be a minimum of 0.1 hectare in size, allocating its sort of actual specific type, given a site-specific code, if it's urban, vacant, or derelict, depending on population size of the settlement it's in. I mean, it all gets very confusing. Details of the owner, previous use, when it becomes vacant, development potential, which effectively is a crystal ball Mystic Meg crystal ball gazing. And then also the data zone it's in. It's really no wonder that it's really hard to keep this brownfield database up to date. Effectively, by the time the information is being collated, the sites are probably being developed, forgotten, or a new housing minister or government is in power. So this also takes no account for really the empty storage and office space underutilised within the UK. We're seeing now numbers across the UK, with numbers reaching an estimated it's about 100 million square feet of empty office and I think that's even storage. I think it's just empty office space itself. So that's clearly a huge housing opportunity and employment opportunity. So I always want to twist these into opportunities. So by sort of Land Hero, and that's where sort of the app kind of came from. Communities are absolutely key as far as we're concerned, and the feeling of really being part of community is essential. The buildings and homes being brought back into use are often going to be used by those individuals close to them. So we want to engage more and more of them at that really first stage. More and more people now work from home or on flexible hours. I think the stats are over about 51% of people never actually move further away than 9 miles from their previous family homes. With the advancements in technology also means people can be more flexible where they work and located. And this provides lots and lots of opportunities rather than feeling like they're being pushed into areas that they can't afford. Residents are focused around where they live, and the biggest investment people make or outgoing income is generally their own home. You therefore invest in where you live. As a result, it's perfect time to improving our own environments and the redundant homes and sites and properties within it. The best people identify what's needed are those people within it. This is our app. It's effectively point and shoot, take a photo where you stand of an empty or derelict building. And this is to really build up a big collaboration really with those users and individuals sending information in. It's geolocated to say where you stand. And then we combine this information and looking to combine this information with a lot of the geolocated information that's out there, and also all the AI advancements in terms of how you can pick up locational data and the associated demographics around it. Our app effectively gives people a sense of pride about being able to report something, doing good and earning rewards. There's also a wellbeing opportunity of going outside, walking, feeling like they're making a difference. We have about 3,500 people have downloaded the app, and last month we had about 1,200 submissions sent to us, and we've grown about 25% month on month of those information coming through. Won a couple of awards, which is quite nice. That was my mum. So thank you, Mum. I don't think she's on. Really, it's about spotlighting empty properties to make landowners accountable, and then attract solutions through a lot of the people probably on here, and investment into housing and employment opportunities. So we believe in collaboration. There's a lot of people that you can see in here. Our Land Heroes are our key one, but then we're working with those public bodies there. We work with charities, and then also national organisations such as things like the National Brownfield Institute. See on the right hand side of that slide, that's the sort of layered information that they're trying to get to, and we're trying to now think about incorporating off the pin drops that are coming in from these local communities. We effectively want to help public bodies, and we actually give this information completely free to all local authorities. So all that are listed there, they get the information completely free, lifetime subscription, so they get to see the sites that are coming in from those Land Heroes. I think this summary probably speaks to itself, really. I'm going to very quickly flicker this knowing time. UK urgently needs housing. That's not a surprise. Land Hero, we're a community-led platform for identifying sites, and that's what we want, a bit more further recognition within those communities to get more and more people sending in sites. Local authorities lack the resource, which we totally understand, and we want to support that. And not a surprise, we need more affordable housing, and for people finding sort of empty and derelict properties are an absolute key to part of that. So what next? We're constantly evolving, and we're socialising feedback in terms of those empty homes and empty properties. Said free subscriptions to local authorities, and then Land Heroes are rewarded personally. They can either redeem them for money in terms of their submissions, or they can actually gift that to charity. Right, that's me. I won't be going too much. I'm looking at sort of the time. What the main thing to do is we're trying to cast a spotlight in terms of the clusterings of those areas where there are empty properties, empty homes, and then hopefully get that information to the people that can deal with it. Thank you very much.
That's great, Ben. Thank you so much. Great to see your work. So just to remind people, we're planning to have a break at the halfway point, and there'll be a further questions and answer sessions at the end, and slides will be shared. So just opening up now to any questions anyone might have. Would anyone like to raise their hands for any questions just now? Over to you, Lynn.
Thanks, Ben. That was really interesting. Really just a query as to how much you're working with any Scottish local authorities or what your relationship is within the sort of Scottish market.
It's why I'm on this. So fairly limited in terms of speaking to Sam and wanting to make sure they're getting to. Generally speaking, a lot of stuff's been around England and Wales. We're not restricted at all. We do have quite a few actual Land Hero users, people of the app, who then have submitted sites to us. I think we've got probably about 50 sites, mainly spread over Glasgow and Edinburgh. But then our key is actually trying to make sure that we're really driving this through, and I said all local authorities, and then giving this platform to individuals that can actually send that information in.
Thank you.
Any further questions just now? Okay, Harry, one from yourself.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for that. I was just wondering, in terms of where the app's been deployed already, and in the communities that it's been deployed in already, do you find that it's primarily existing sites that are already high profile within that community that it's kind of building up momentum around, or are there cases where they kind of uncover sites that people haven't thought about before? Is that something that you're looking at? What's the kind of outcome of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I've just actually shared my last slide. So actually my last slide, in the background of that slide, there was effectively 33 sites which had been identified by the Brownfield Register. There was then another 25 sites which were part of the National Brownfield Institute, which they'd recognised different types of sites which could come forward for development. And then there was also another 30 to 40 sites should be just identified by the actual individual user. So what we're doing is we're seeing sort of a balance of a mixture. Some people will send in things that you already recognise and that have gone past all day, but then we're getting plenty of people just taking a photo of some space above a shop, or a shop that becomes empty, or a pub that becomes empty that isn't actually nationally known. And because it's instant, and people are doing that very quickly. So it's a real mixed balance. People, because it's through social media, so we don't actually introduce it specifically into individual communities unless we do community groups or other things. But we're just saying through the power of social media, it's reward driven and points driven. So that's where we're trying to drive it. So.
Okay, so as I say, we've got that further question and answer session at the end. I think we'll take one more question if anyone has any just now. Okay, well, I'll take that as my cue for the next item on the agenda. So that's over to yourself, Harry Whitmore from South of Scotland Community Housing, otherwise known as SOSCH. Thank you very much for your session there, Ben.
Thank you very much, Sam. Let me just sort out. Is that all okay with the screen sharing? Can everyone see?
It's great here, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for having me. As Sam said, my name is Harry Whitmore. I am the Community-Led Housing Coordinator for South East Scotland at South of Scotland Community Housing. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about our work with empty homes and empty buildings, and with communities, and understanding that, sharing some of our learning, the core themes that we've understood from working with communities around empty homes and buildings, and bringing them back into use as affordable community-led housing. So without further ado, we'll begin. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about SOSCH, who we are and what we do, our work, and specifically its intersection with empty homes and buildings. Then we're going to look at 5 different case studies. I'm going to do a brief overview of each and talk about all of them being empty homes and buildings case studies, talk about that process and the outcomes of those projects. Then I'm going to move on and speak about the SOSCH and the Scottish Empty Homes partnership work in South East Scotland, which led to the introduction of a Southeast coordinator and the expansion of SOSCH's geography. And we'll touch on those core themes and lessons I mentioned about earlier. So without further ado, who are SOSCH? So SOSCH is Southern Scotland's community-led housing enabler. We are recognised as the regional delivery partner for community-led housing in the Scottish Government's Rural and Islands Housing Action Plan in 2023. We were founded originally in 2006 under a different name to address a shortfall in rural housing supply in southwest Scotland. However, in 2020, SOSCH expanded its geography to cover the whole of southern Scotland. In the time of being an organisation, we've developed a strong track record of project delivery, and we currently have a pipeline of community-led housing projects amongst a number of different communities in this region. So that's who we are. What is it that we do? So first and foremost, SOSCH provides direct enabler support in the planning and delivery of affordable community-led housing. So this is typically a long process where we work from the community from the very inception, right, that first idea, through to handover of keys and ongoing and supporting any arrangements that need to be made for the management of the properties. That will start typically. SOSCH's first piece of formal work is about assessing local housing need and demand, inquiring about what kind of project they want, which is where ideas around empty homes often get brought in, and we'll touch on that later. SOSCH also gives advice and learning to the communities that we're working with. So we share the information that we have and we raise that knowledge level, which has been a key part of my work in South East Scotland. But we also connect them with peers who are doing similar projects, as well as other organisations which can help them complete their projects going into the future. And this ties into another one of SOSCH's kind of core workflows, is that we build strategic partnerships to make sure that community-led housing and communities themselves are supported to the greatest possible extent. This will be with the national government, regional economic powers like South of Scotland Enterprise, right down to the local third sector interface and other community organisations. So it's a great range of partnerships, including, of course, the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership, which we utilise to make sure that both community-led housing and the communities in question are supported as best as possible. Now, SOSCH's work straddles a number of different policy areas, as you can probably imagine. So one of the core ones, obviously, is housing and housing delivery, especially rural housing delivery. But we're also involved in other fields, such as community land ownership and land reform, as well as community wealth building, and also in many cases, specifically in the work of empty homes. So in this slide here, we have two examples of the work that we've done sharing knowledge with communities, one at an area partnership meeting in Hoyk, and another when we arranged a peer learning session with a number of communities across Berwickshire to see a couple of community ownership projects in the sort of central southern Scotland area. But what does that mean specifically for empty homes and buildings? Well, there's a number of ways that a community will begin to get engaged with SOSCH. That might be to do with their specific interest in addressing shortfall of housing supply. A service might be closed, but more often than, well, not more often than not, but often communities get involved with SOSCH when they identify an empty home or building within their community that is causing several problems and they wish to address it. That's often the starting point that we've had with many different communities. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a number of different projects where that was the case, and the community got in touch with us about a building that was causing a problem, and we helped them come up with a community-led housing solution. The first of these is the old police station in Langham. So this project, it had been derelict. It's right at the heart of in Langham. It was owned by Dumfries and Galloway Council, and obviously it used to be the old police station for the town before it was no longer suitable for that purpose. It had been derelict for 15 years. It was Grade B listed, so there were a number of challenges that presented around developing that project, and it was causing a significant negative presence in that town centre as it became more and more derelict over time. In 2017, a community organisation known as the Eskdale Foundation acquired the old police station via a community asset transfer from the Dumfries and Galloway Council and worked with SOSCH to turn the building into 4 energy-efficient community-led homes. That met a number of different needs within that community. Some were family homes, one was a home for an older person, and then a single younger person as well. And as a consequence of that project, it was a finalist for the SURF Awards Housing and Regeneration category, and it won the 2022 Scottish Empty Homes Awards Best Old Wreck category. Secondly, we have the former Grapes Hotel in Whithorn. Similarly, this is a situation where in the heart of the village of Whithorn, there was an empty, derelict, prominent building, the Grapes Hotel. This time the building had been derelict for 30 years and was in a very difficult state, causing a problem for you know, all the problems that are associated with empty homes in town centres. At which point the community trust, All Roads Lead to Whithorn, got in touch with SOSCH about what they could do to turn it into affordable community-led housing, because the area was really struggling with a lack of families and an aging population, which was putting pressure on certain services. So SOSCH worked with All Roads Lead to Whithorn from about 2018, and we worked to turn it into 2 family homes for people in the community. That was a successful project, introduced 2 families, and we're now working on phase 2 of the project, which is introducing 2 more homes, making use of the Burgess plot space at the back of the hotel. This project for that one, it was the Scottish Empty Homes Awards winner in 2023. Third project, Wigtown Affordable Housing and Bunkhouse. So this was a mixed use project, again, taking another village centre building right on the high street in Wigtown and turning it into a mixed use project, which included a family home and an accessible home and a bunkhouse that could be used to support the village's book festival. It was acquired via a community right to buy, and then SOSCH worked with the community to assess that housing need and redevelop it. And that's provided a home for a local family and an accessible home and a key economic asset for the village as well. Fourth project, we have Glentrool Hyven Housing. Likewise, it was a mixed-use project. This took 3 empty homes which had become derelict, which were owned by a local housing association, brought them into community ownership and redeveloped them to introduce new families into the local area. Similar to the Whithorn project. Likewise, it led to the former primary school being brought back into use as a community hub and a community let. So that was an effective use of community power as well in bringing empty buildings back into life in the village. Final project, I'm a bit concerned about time, so I'm going to whiz through this one, is Mid Steeple Quarter, which is a somewhat high-profile project in Dumfries town centre, bringing back a quarter of the town into use as it became derelict and disused. The idea came from the Stove Network, which was trying to envision a future for Dumfries town centre after it faced many years of decline and had lots of empty buildings and had few to no residents living there anymore. So SOSCH worked with them to come up with a master plan for around 60 homes, supporting that on a policy level, on a housing need level, lobbying where necessary, and led to what is now phase 1, which is nearly completed, accepting applications currently for tenants in the property, which introduced 7 flats onto Dumfries High Street and an enterprise space into the ground floor. Again, bringing life back into the town centre. It's had lots of applicants, so hopefully that'll be a successful project when completed as well. So that's the kind of work that SOSCH has been doing around empty homes and buildings. And right now I'm going to speak to my experience as the South East coordinator about some of the kind of key anchor points around empty homes. So SOSCH is collaborating with the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership, introducing a South East coordinator in November 2022 to expand SOSCH's work from South West Scotland right into South East Scotland, primarily focusing on the borders. The partnership collaboration has been very successful at laying the foundations for community-led housing and beginning to bring knowledge and to the forefront, and now developing a pipeline of projects that we're working on in the area. And a lot of these has been around empty buildings. We've had around 30 communities make inquiries around community-led housing. A lot of these have been specifically tied to existing empty buildings in those communities that communities want to do something about. And we are taking a number of those projects forward and taking them along the SOSCH pipeline process across the borders and elsewhere in South East Scotland as well. And so here are some examples of the kinds of projects that communities have highlighted towards us. As you can see, it's a huge range of different kinds of buildings. You've got churches, you've got hotels, former council housing, and then more commercial buildings as well. So communities are really interested in a wide range of projects that have a real impact on them and they want to see be utilized in the best possible way. And so the core themes that have come through from the learning of SOSCH's previous experiences, or ongoing experiences in Southwest Scotland and our new learning in Southeast Scotland are the following: that communities really care and have a lot of knowledge about empty homes and buildings in their area. It's very rare that a community will come and ask us about what building they could potentially use. It's very common that they'll know a lot about this building, be connected with people who have information about the building, have networks that as an organization like ourselves, we not necessarily having people live in the area, we might not have access to. So they're really fountains of knowledge about these buildings, and they care significantly and they want to do things about them. These buildings can also be used to provide essential homes in fragile places, as well as relieving high pressure markets. So I think sometimes when you think about bringing empty homes back into use, it's in areas which there's a lot of pressure on the existing stock and it can add to that. However, by bringing back these buildings, like I've shown in the previous slides, it can provide homes that wouldn't have existed otherwise for people when there's limited options available for example, families or people with certain accessibility needs, and it helps sustain those places into the future, keeping services open, etc. As I was saying earlier, communities are interested in all different kinds of buildings and are willing to tackle some of the most challenging buildings in their communities to really feel that benefit, where other investors or developers might not be so willing to do so. As the benefits may not be strictly financial, there could be so many other knock-on benefits, such as helping keep those kind of core services open, providing income to community organizations, that providing other services which don't generate revenue, and having a social impact in developing those local institutions with those communities. So loads of benefits of working with empty homes and working with communities to bring them back into use. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. And we're always looking to for more opportunities to work with communities or build partnerships to support those in Southern Scotland to deliver affordable community-led housing. So for more information, follow our website or send me an email. And thank you very much for your time.
That's great. Thank you very much, Harry. I'm gonna abuse the chair a bit here and just ask a quick question myself. I just wanted to point people towards the SOSCH YouTube page. I'll put a link in the chat because you have some great videos that really encapsulate the work you do and how it helps the communities. So I just wondered, do you have any new videos planned at all?
I'm not sure about any new videos in the works currently. I'm sure there will be more as we complete more projects, and it's part of that process of project handover that we try and capture information in those videos, not just a fact, thing by thing that happened, but understanding how that impacted local people, the families living in those buildings, and the wider impact that it has on the community, the sense of pride and empowerment, and the provision of services. So I'm sure we'll continue to produce those videos to promote the benefits of community-led housing. Absolutely.
Great, thanks. Any questions from the other attendees? So just a reminder again, there's that wider question and answer session at the end. So I'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much for that, Harry. So next is Grand Bequest. Over to you, Catherine, if you're ready.
I'm going to click the present in Teams button and see how it goes. Harry, I hope that's what you did. All right.
If you share your screen, you should be able to share the slides, yeah.
See if it works. Let me know once it comes through. Can you guys all see that?
It's just loading just now. It's looking good. Yeah, that's great. Can see that fine.
Awesome. I love new buttons. All right.
Buttons,
good morning, everybody. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody else, for their presentations. I am going to make an assumption that everybody here kind of is already aware of the empty building problem that we have, especially here in Scotland. And I'm going to instead give you guys an introduction into what we're doing at Grand Bequest, and some of the updates that we've had. So one of the things that is really important to start off with is Grand Bequest. We are a certified B Corp. We are primarily focusing on Scotland's empty buildings and working on local, regional, and national strategies to get the funding and the technology built that's necessary to solve this problem. So we are specifically looking to transform all of these beautiful, empty and derelict, distressed, forgotten, abandoned, vacant, all the words that we use for these sites, and transforming them into impact investments. And we're going to talk about that during this presentation. So our vision at Grand Bequest is to help make regenerating buildings more common, make that the status quo. Because today that seems to be more of a rarity than it needs to be. So we want to flip that upside down and make the demolitions of these buildings the more rare exception. And so in order to change society and the way that we operate to that degree, we need to start looking at this problem in a different way. And the reason that this is such an important thing is because we actually demolish a building every 10 minutes in the UK. And that's given all of the pressures that the real estate and the built environment are already under, let alone cost of living, inflation, and all the things that are currently underway. But as Ben and others have already said, redeveloping these buildings is not only crucial for our housing supply shortage, but also for our biodiversity and our natural elements that we need to start focusing on as well. So there's a lot of pressure being put onto our local communities that are trying to save and protect these assets, but also meet the large challenges that we have at this time. So back in 2019, there was a Freedom of Information Request Act done that pulled together a lot of the information and concluded that over 700,000 empty buildings are throughout the UK. We personally think those numbers are actually low, given that that's 2019, pre-COVID. So we can all imagine that there's been a lot of destruction of value and a lot of issues that have caused that number probably is up in the millions in our estimation. So when we start thinking about all of these empty buildings, when we start talking to the sectors, we're told that these are too expensive to save, they're way too risky because we can't possibly know about the structure and how much damage, and they're just too stressful. For a lot of the real estate sector, it's just easier to demolish the buildings, don't have to worry about historical issues, don't have to worry about the planning consents, and you just get to move on with a clean slate. But that sounded wrong. It just didn't really make sense to us and the team. And we kept being told, well, these buildings are distressed for a reason, right? Like somebody else would have saved it if it was viable. And we started questioning this, going, well, that still doesn't sound right. It doesn't really make that much sense. And so we just started really asking the question, why aren't we reusing these precious, rare resources? And we came up with a simple answer. It's because we lack a repeatable, scalable, data-driven system. We keep approaching these problems as a one-off situation in a bespoke format with no technology to really support shared learning and growth. So that's really what Grand Bequest came around to help solve. So the team and I are very excited about how we founded in February of 2020. And COVID hit a week later. So we definitely have had a rocky start, as many of you guys would understand. But we're proud of all the progress that we've made. So especially with some of the awards that we have been winning, including Female Founder of the Year and Green Startup of the Year, as well as Diversity and Social and Environmental Impact Awards. But that is to say that we are definitely trying to be a leader in the ESG, sustainability, B Corp, all the different brands, certifications, but just as a way for us to continue to push the envelope forward and what business for good really represents. And so when we really started, so my background is actually not architecture or conservation. My background is business and supply chain. And when you start looking at a problem at the scale of this, you start asking yourself, what if you don't want to just save one building? What if you don't want to just save a couple buildings? What if you want to solve the actual problem? Then the first thing you need to think about is, how do you know where to start? So when you think about supply chain and business, that's the first question. When you have over 700,000 things pulling for resource and capacity, how do you know which project gets your attention first? And so that's where we came up with the Grand Grade. So this is actually based on my doctoral thesis with the University of Liverpool. And we came up with the Grand Grade. Now, the grand grade is a simple 2-digit score that allows us to actually prioritize and sort the empty buildings for the first time ever. And it's based on 4 main categories of data that we pull together. So the first one is the cultural significance of the site. So thinking about things like, is it listed? Does it have cultural significance in that area? Do the community members consider this to be a high social value site for them? Is it in a conservation area? And all these different details that should be pulled into consideration. Instead of seeing listings as a negative deterrent, we see them as a positive indicator that this site really should deserve more attention and more resource. The second criteria is social benefit. So thinking about how engaged the local community is behind this building, what kind of benefits would the end use of this site give to that local community, so that we can, again, prioritize projects that are really going to support delivering true social impact and social benefit to that community once the project is completed. The third category is adaptability. So we're really taking this concept of adaptability and pushing it a little further than normal. So we look at this in 2 different ways. So the first way is the adaptability of the site itself. So can this site be reused for many different purposes? We're always trying to maximize, create more opportunities for this site to be useful. So any ways that we can be promoting multi-end uses or mixed use is the point of our projects and the algorithms that we're building to make recommendations into the end use of these sites. But also the adaptability of the site once it's successfully completed. So we want to see community groups and projects that are pushing for these buildings to be used 24/7, open access, being public spaces again as much as possible. So it's not just the site, but also the way that these projects will be used once they're completed that we're most excited about supporting. And the final obvious category is financial viability. So can these projects sustain themselves? Will they one day become empty and derelict again? Will they become a burden on the community again? So we really want to make sure that the recommendations and the projects that we're helping create and helping fund are able to sustain themselves moving forward. So that's, again, really why we're trying to help enable community groups to think multi-use, to think as adaptably and as creatively as they can, because a lot of that is really where the impact is going to be able to be delivered for these projects. And then we spent a lot of time, again, studying the supply chain, starting to look at why is this so broken? And we came up with 6 steps, or what we call our grand phases towards the reuse revolution in our empty buildings. And I'm not going to go into these in huge detail, but I just wanted to indicate the importance of simplicity when you're dealing with a supply chain as broken as this. So the first 2 phases are all around technology and how we can use AI and deep learning around the data sets that are available, but also around the missing information that we need to start gathering. So the Bequest phase is exactly like Ben was mentioning, is the importance of community groups reporting their buildings and really helping the local authorities and the private sector supply chain representatives, like those on this call, come together and collaborate. Then the F phases, or the feasibility and finance, allow us to bring in more technology-related partners to assess the sites. So we have drone providers that come in to help us assess the structural integrity of the sites. We are working with a variety of other construction supply chain vendors to help create those investable case studies for these projects. And that's actually where our algorithms are currently focused right now, is how do we create wider scale of funding for these projects and get the right layers of algorithms in to help unlock more funding. And then the final 2 phases, construction and conservation, where we hand over to this amazing group of heritage conservationists and construction team members that help bring these projects to life with our community groups. And the final phase is celebrate, because it became very obvious that these projects on average take 9 years. And as an impatient American, I can't imagine taking that long to have to try to do something so broken and so painful and so negative. So we really want our projects to be seen as a point of celebration when we host our grand opening celebrations with our communities. So we want to remind people the opportunity that these become community events, these become community supported projects, and then there's an opportunity for everybody to come together. And trying to get through time just really quick. So the main thing that we're doing is we're not charging for our members. We're not charging for local community groups and local councils. So we really are aligning our revenue to the funding that we're able to help raise for these projects. So we really want to be aligned to seeing value be delivered for you and your community groups and your projects. And we do that by helping fund through impact. So if there's one thing you guys take away from this presentation, I highly recommend you get this book by Sir Ronald Cohen called Impact. And it explains what's happening in the finance sector and how everything is kind of re-gearing itself to try to move money away from carbon intensive investments into projects exactly like these. So I was actually just in New York on a UK trade mission for New York City FinTech Week, representing Scotland in the Tartan Week Parade, and also representing the wider UK in trying to help create these wider packages of funding for regeneration to really take hold here in Scotland. So it's this shift away from just making decisions on our finances with risk and return in mind, but now starting to think about the impact of where our finance is being placed. And so this is a really exciting time for us to be creating these investable projects, and covering them in impact is the way that we kind of like to think about it. And so to wrap up, we are now launching our third version of our app. So we also, as Ben is learning as well, is all about community groups and all about making sure that we're able to pull together these buildings and make it easier for people to know how to move forward, where to prioritize, and again, how to get access to that wider funding. So we have not actually launched our new version yet, but for the people on this call, happy for you guys to get in there early. So it's just app@grandbequest.co.uk, and I've made a QR here for you. But this is our marketplace of current projects. So we've got about 150 loaded right now. We've got about 7,000 assessed, and we're going to be reloading those in once we kind of get a little bit more feedback from groups like the Glasgow Council and some of the other community groups that we're working with. So please go in there, please give us feedback, please try it and use it. Again, this is a free tool that we've created for local communities, local councils, and anybody that has buildings that they want to see help get funded and help create this technology infrastructure that we need to get these projects moving. And that's me trying to make sure that I don't go over on time, which I normally do. So again, this is my LinkedIn, so please do reach out. Grand Bequest is here to try to pull this ecosystem together. We are not here to compete. We are here to try to collaborate and try to solve this problem with as many partners and as many community groups and councils as we can. So we're focused here in Scotland, and we are definitely going to make sure that we stay here working with the local government on rolling out some new legislation and trying to help local community groups and local universities really make their impact. So that's me. I hope that was helpful.
That's absolutely great, and bang on with the time, actually. So
I had a little timer for you, Sam. I was really trying.
No, perfect. So that was brilliant. Any questions at all from anyone? So I'm going to ask a question if I can, being cheeky again. I'm just wondered if you could briefly touch upon partner certification at all, if you'd be happy to expand on that just now.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great question. So one of the other things that we're currently working on following the end of the trade mission in April is working with the supply chain here in Scotland to create a new certification program. And what that certification program is going to allow us to be able to do is help create an expedited pipeline to planning, to funding, and to trying to get these types of projects treated with the respect that they deserve. So we're working with a variety of different partners here in Scotland to create that first certification layer. And we're also working with FinTech Scotland and Financial Regulation Innovation Lab applications, in addition to a variety of Innovate UK grants that we're putting into creating this certification. And why it's so exciting and why it's so important is because it's going to allow us to continue to layer into our algorithms and into that deep tech, that AI that we're trying to build, to help these projects go over these kinds of technology-based hurdles. So recommendations on what the building could be used for, recommendations on the types of planning issues you might run into, recommendations on the perfect partners that you could be working with for that particular project based on the different criteria we see. So if it's listed versus not, if it's in a certain area versus not. So we're trying to really simplify the process so that these community projects can get started faster, and that they also have a better understanding of the costs that they should be expecting to work with these partners and to have this project move forward. Because normally, I think most of you guys would agree that when you talk with a community group, when they're first assessing an empty site, the first two questions they're going to ask is, who even owns this building and how much is this going to cost? Or maybe sometimes they'll say, we don't really know what we want to use it for. Make it a community hub. And so that was really where we thought that the AI and the technology could start to come in and create more recommendations based on scalable data, based on the partners' availability, based on their expertise and their assessments of the sites, and kind of help create more of a collaborative conversation as opposed to trying to start from scratch. So thank you for reminding me to mention that. But if anybody is interested in their teams working with us on being part of that first cohort of partners, we are now underway creating the first 300 million social linked bond to try to get these projects the wider scale capital that they need in partnership with Scottish Government and a variety of other financial institutions. So please reach out if this is something that you are interested in joining with us on as we continue to try to innovate this supply chain for you guys.
Excellent. And yes, you did say 300 million.
Again, yeah, if we all agree to the scale of the problem, then the scale of the finance that we need to find is kind of where it's really exciting, because the impact community is in those billions and trillions. I think the most recent numbers I saw was 2 billion pounds a day is desperate to get moved. So we really do need to gear up and get into those numbers as quickly as we can.
So just before we're due to go on the break. Any further questions for anyone before we depart for a break just now? What I would encourage as well, if there's, we've had quite a lot of content there. So if anyone would like to put in the chat any questions that come to mind, we can make sure to cover that at the end of the session. Well, without further...
I'll throw the link to our app in the chat as well. I do have to run, unfortunately. I'm heading to Housing 2024 in Manchester. So if anybody else is going to be there, see you there. But I look forward to watching the recap. And if anybody does have questions, please feel free to reach out. I would absolutely love to hear from people.
Can we retain you just to answer Ben's question? Would we be able to
Sure,
put that
of course.
in? Yeah. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Really, really interesting hearing about that, and actually understanding that sort of dynamics of that impact funding in terms of where the balance is with, is it ESG they're really focusing in? Is it I mean, obviously ESG obviously is elements of it, isn't it? But is it more the social, or is it more the it's almost like the retrofitting the renewable, or is it almost as a package? They just see as ESG as one big package. Are they kind of focusing on any specific elements that you're sort of seeing?
Such a good question. So that was actually one of the first things that we try to dive into as well, is because this world is being created right now. This whole idea of impact finance and how it should be created, frameworks, all those things. So the answer is a lot of the E is getting a lot of attention. So obviously when you think about embodied carbon, waste, these buildings are the #1 waste provider in Scotland. Over 52% of our waste is due to the demolition and construction of buildings. So that one is a common conversation, but the #1 thing that we keep hearing is housing, affordable and social housing delivery. A lot of social housing funds, a lot of pension and institutional level funds see those as real estate backed, government rent, stabilized income. And so that's really what they're most interested in, is us creating these larger packages of regenerative housing. So that's really what we're working on right now, is trying to figure out how to create that due diligence pipeline so that funding can just start flowing into these projects. So it's a lot about the E, but mostly it's just about the output of housing that everybody's really aligning around, which is what I think all of us want. Empty buildings, people need homes. Why not put the two together? So that's actually how we closed our first round of investment at the end of last year. Crisis is actually one of our VC backers, in addition to National Association of Realtors. They also have a VC arm. So all of what we're doing now is prioritizing that housing delivery, the algorithms that we need to kind of pull the funding together. And then the next focus will be on the partners, really deploying that capital and seeing where technology can kind of help move things faster forward towards those billions and trillions that we're going to need to really solve this problem. So it's going to be a fun ride at this stage. But
we'll begin now. So the next session is with Akira from Habitat for Humanity. So I hope everyone's refreshed now, and over to yourself, Akira.
Thank you very much, Sam. Yes, my name is Akira Kazawa. I'm a Director of Impact from the Habitat for Humanity Great Britain. And today I'd like to present our flagship program, Empty Space to Homes, talking about the program history, progress, and what is our new future strategy for the next 3 years. Okay, some colleagues maybe not have familiar with Habitat for Humanity, but the Habitat for Humanity Great Britain is a part of the International Habitat Network, starting originally in America. Habitat now operating in over 70 countries to fight housing poverty. We do this through the building homes, advocating for better housing systems and policies, making home healthier through the better water and sanitation facility, and responding to disasters and emerging which threaten homes. And since Habitat for Humanity began in 1976, we have helped more than 46 million people and work in over 70 countries around the world to tackle housing poverty. We therefore have a global network of partners, experts in all areas of housing and homelessness. And the idea of Empty Space to Home program started in the UK and Poland in 2018, based on the housing refurbishment project in both countries. Over the years, we created the coalition of like-minded organizations, conducted researches, refurbished empty properties in the UK, especially London and Poland, and developed the toolkit and the mobile app, and started roadshow events to demonstrate the toolkits. And our flagship UK program, Empty Space to Home, where we take empty and vacant business commercial spaces and turn them into the affordable rented accommodation for people that need it in collaboration with councils. We have developed the model of transformation to support housing, homelessness, and other social organizations to scale up transformational empty spaces for vulnerable groups in their communities. Currently, we are providing affordable housing for young caregivers in partnership with London Barking-Dagenham Council. And for this program, the coalition is so important to engaging stakeholders. This coalition will further expand for the next phase. And the research was also very important in having a credible base for our argument and for profile raising. We secured media coverage of our reports and living case studies or demonstration project. So far in the UK, we are initially planned for London as well as Scotland. And Scotland, we have faced several challenges, so we haven't materialized yet. But in London, we made 11 bed spaces for young caregivers. This has enabled us to secure further grants on smaller scale and to demonstrate the model. And the toolkit and research is also ongoing at the moment, and you can download from the toolkits as well as the Empty Space app. And the road shows that we started this in phase last year and continuing now, and which will more available for any workshop and the webinars on toolkits. So last year we produced our Empty Space portal app. It's very similar app of this morning. The Ben from the Land Heroes presented, and this we created this Empty Space portal app in collaboration with corporate partner M&G. It allows users to easily log empty properties in their local area, which helps us to build a crowdsourced database of vacant commercial and business spaces and buildings. And in the second phase of the program, we will further develop and market the app in order to gain locally sourced data that will be used for the research purposes. By unlocking the power of the cloud, we can raise the profile of the potential of the empty and disused properties in solving the UK's housing crisis. We also launched our toolkit, empty space toolkit, to homes toolkit last year, that demonstrate to other organizations how they can produce their own empty space or similar project. And for many organizations, a project like this will seem daunting due to the finance, regulation, and the risk involved. However, this toolkit aims to provide support in all of these areas and show organizations that actually it doesn't have to be as complicated or difficult as they may think. It is split into 4 sections: community engagement, finance and fundraising, legal guidance, and design and construction. We are also launching a series of webinars this year based on around each of these sections of toolkits. These will be free of charge and provide expert advice from our partners with each of the specific field of the empty space project, so organizations can follow along and gain training on how to implement various elements of the empty space project. Lessons and successes. So vacant council-owned property in Dagenham have been successfully innovated by the Habitat to create a new social housing stock now being used to house vulnerable groups, including unaccompanied minor refugees who previously would have been accommodated in the high-cost B&B or temporary accommodation. So from our experience, average innovation in London cost 78,000 per bed space. And however, over the 15-year period that we have a contract agreement with the council, the local housing authority would see as more than 700,000 per bed space. So we also had 2 advocacy success. Firstly, our empty space approach, but discussed at all party parliamentary group for housing. And secondly, London Housing Assembly Housing Committee recommended the empty space approach will mitigate homelessness and improve temporary accommodation. Our program partner, London Borough Park in Dagenham, quoted that it has given us the option to think differently, to imagine solutions and look again at the possibility of imagining and repurposing the empty properties where we have agency and control. We are reframing the conversation around the social housing by taking an innovative approach that makes it possible to create affordable housing in an environmentally friendly way that addresses the housing crisis and prevent homelessness on a large sustainable scale rather than continue to manage it. And 33% of caregivers become homeless with the first 2 years of leaving the care system. But our project in Dagenham have prevented this from happening, proving that solution is to prevent the problem before it occurs. And our aim is to create housing within town centers at the heart of each location so that people we are housing can become fully integrated community members and also have full access to all the service that they might need. And we are offering a long-term sustainable solution to the current homelessness and the housing crisis. We want to showcase the project can be adapted not just in a few locations, but across the whole the UK, including Scotland. And it is clear from the studies and data that using existing building and retrofitting them is a much more environmentally friendly and sustainable method of creating housing rather than construction new builds. And using an existing building can reduce the emission by 50 to 70% compared to new building. There are many benefits to retrofitting, including reducing carbon emission and the greenhouse gases, and it's also improving house. And talking about the economic cost, we used data from the councils in collaboration with Empty Home Network to work out the cost savings for council across a 15-year period, and how many potential bed spaces could be created from the number of vacant business commercial spaces in the areas, using a study conducted by London Borough of the Anfield. We found that if the council adopt our empty space to home approach, for example, Sheffield Council could be saving more than £45 million over 15 years, and the Aberdeen Council could be saving £78 million over 15 years. This is just based on local authority on the building. When you look at the number of the private owned empty space, the potential is huge. And currently, we are planning to the empty space program, Chapter 2, for the next 3 years. And Chapter 2 will have the 4 pillars: research, advocacy, scalability, and demonstration. In particular, for scalability, we will develop the new financial mechanism to targeted investors to enable upscaling. Okay, thank you very much for listening. If you have, I'll be happy to have any comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Sakura. That was great. Any questions or comments? Lynn?
Thank you very much. Could I ask about the financial model currently, here for the approach that you've been taking? And obviously you're talking about scalability of that. We're really interested just to get any insights.
For the demonstration project with the London Borough in Dagenham, we had the agreement that the 85% maximum on the refurbished cost come from the council. That's providing for our support or technical support, and then the other less of 15%, Habitat will raise funds from their partners. But it's quite a limited model at the moment. So we're looking at the further for the scale up. We need to really think about look at the more bigger opportunity for the investment.
Okay, so yeah, that was absolutely great. Thank you for that. So I think we'll move on to the next section now, if that's okay. And we do have that further section at the end for additional conversations. So the next section is the Skyline project from Diagonal. So that's over to you now, please, Veronica Barbaro.
Thank you. Let me just, can you see something that looks like some presentation slides?
Yeah, that looks perfect to me.
Brilliant. So I'm just on my little screen. So I've got my phone next to me for timekeeping. So if you see me looking down, I'm not doing something else. I'm just checking the time.
Don't be too stressed. We're doing good for time, I think.
Okay, amazing. Great. So Skyline is one of our products and projects, I suppose. And when I say we, I'm talking about Diagonal. So Diagonal is the startup I work for. We are a geospatial data science consultancy. This is us. So there's just under 10 of us, and we are a very multidisciplinary team when you think about kind of like a technology company. So I'm a planner, and prior to joining Diagonal, I've spent a long time working in mostly private practice, mostly on kind of complex regeneration projects, mostly in England. But our team covers kind of all kind of areas, from kind of like software engineering through to kind of data science, UX design, and we've also got some great people helping us with our communications. And what we do at Diagonal, primarily on the consultancy side, really, we build bespoke interactive tools to support transparent data exploration, to kind of support a data-driven approach to placemaking, and supporting the visualization of information, which is often kind of held behind closed doors. And we are very much about building data, building technology for good. We are a steward-owned company, and we very much believe in hope that the tools we build are to support more sustainable communities. And everything we build is built on top of our own bespoke geospatial computation engine, which structures the world slightly different to normal kind of geospatial tools which use layers, which means that what we do is quite good at kind of mobility and routing type analysis, but also can analyze data, place-based data at scale quite fast. So in terms of at Diagonal, what we do, so we've got our geospatial computation engine, which is actually open source. So if anyone is particularly interested in kind of geospatial analysis on here, feel free to drop me a message and I can send you all the documentation for that and you can play around with it. We are also primarily up to Skyline, where we've mostly worked on a consultancy basis, so building bespoke tools. And then what I'm here to talk to you today is about Skyline, which is our first licensable tool. So Skyline was developed very much in collaboration with mostly Scottish local authorities as part of one of the CIFTech challenges. So for any of you who are not familiar with CIFTech, they are a Scottish organisation whose remit is to match public sector problems with technology solutions. And we answered a call back in 2022, I want to say, or 21. Time just flies. Anyway, we've answered a call very much around kind of town centre revitalisation. The challenge was defined as how can we use technology to better understand the issues facing our town centres and be a catalyst for revitalisation. And the sponsors behind the call were South of Scotland Enterprise and Scottish Borders Council. We had 15 weeks to develop a proof of concept, which isn't very much when you, especially because our approach is very much around co-creation, and we wanted to do lots of stakeholder engagement to drill a bit deeper into the question, and it's quite a big question. And after talking to many different officers within the council, people within SOSI, people working within local communities, and also SOSI put us in touch with some other Scottish, some of the other enterprise agencies. We thought that what we would focus on is developing a tool that can support place-based investment and policy decisions, helping, so really celebrating and kind of supporting the place agenda, also really supporting the onus that has been put on local authorities to adopt 20-minute neighbourhood kind of concepts into policies, and really starting with trying to provide transparent place-based baseline to kind of inform those decisions. And as part of the development of this tool, we piloted it with a few partners. That's, I want to say, all but one in local authorities. And we had a really great time piloting with Rachel Whale, who's the Scottish Borders Council MT Homes officer, and her kind of, so we worked with her to develop a use case, and she thought it would be really interesting to focus on Hoyk, because Hoyk has such a high prevalence of empty homes, and she was kind of like looking at lots of different data sets and trying to make out why, is there a particular trend? Is there a reason why there's such a prevalence of empty homes? And so we worked with her, and not just with her, but with a number of other teams within other local authorities from about June of last year to January of this year. And over the course of that period of time, it was very much an iterative process. So we would show them kind of like our proof of concept tool, then we get feedback, then we develop it a little bit more, show it to them again, and develop it a bit more until we got to something that we were, kind of happy with, but also that culminated with the end of the CivTech process. So we were working to specific timescales. Working with Rachel and then other officers informed development of a number of features, the types of categories that are important when you consider what a place feels like and what makes a sustainable place. The fact that when you look at mobility, multimodal is important, and the ability to change distances, the ability to do region-wide analysis as well. Obviously, we were looking at Hoyk, but Rachel's responsible for the whole of the Scottish borders. So being able to pan across the whole of the local authority area and kind of understand how places compare is also really important. Interactive map blend, and also we updated the user interface to make the colors not as you see them now, but the colors more defined and easy to distinguish. So just to give you an idea, so this is a screenshot of the what we started building with Rachel that focuses on Hoyk. And here what our tool did at the time is it gave you an idea of kind of like the data is all building level data, but it gives you the idea to kind of like zoom out and understand what provision is like for every building in terms of walking, and in this case, driving and bus distance to different amenities. And so here, for instance, it will show you that. So the bluer buildings have got access to two schools within a 15-minute walk, and then the shading changes as accessibility changes. And I'll give you a demo of the kind of final work in progress version. So I just thought screenshots for now probably do the trick. And actually what Rachel found helpful in this case is she knew, so she wasn't able, because this was a pilot, she didn't get the sign off to share the empty homes data with us. She knew where it was, so it helped her to understand the context of those empty homes and understanding whether their location and perhaps their lack of proximity to certain facilities or otherwise dictated whether that was a reason why some properties were empty, like long-term empty. But past the pilot process, this wouldn't be an issue because the ingesting of data doesn't sit with us. So it would be basically like a tool on someone's like that someone has a link to, and people can pull in their own data, and we don't keep data, so we're not a database. And then this screenshot shows the kind of multimodal side of things. So these are all flexibles, but for this kind of proof of concept exercise, we thought it'd be interesting to look at different distances, 15-minute walking, 30-minute walking, and 20-minute bus journey. And this, so all these journeys are not as the crow flies, using actual paths. And we also add a cost calculation for terrain, which is obviously becomes more important in areas where there are hills. And then, so developing this tool, what we were really keen for it was for it to be an interactive map with a dashboard functionality, to give people the ability to explore accessibility to amenities, services, and active travel across entire geographical areas. Ability to test scenarios, which is something that was added on following the kind of pilots that we did, and easily share analysis results. So I'm just wondering, I would like, okay, instead of, because you'll have the slides, I thought I'd put the video in there. What I'm actually going to do is I'll just do a live demo, because I think it might be more interesting. And then you've got the video which shows you how it works. So this is what Skyline looks like now. This is actually not a Scottish town. This is a town in the southwest of England, but that has got a lot of similar problems to a lot of towns all over the UK. And we thought this was an interesting one because it's got there's regeneration funding from going into this town. There are a lot of empty high street buildings, and there's quite a lot of deprivation. So we thought it'd be more interesting to pick a town like that than like a big city like London or Edinburgh or something like this. So the two, so you'll see here, there's like a baseline tab and a scenario tab. The baseline tab is very much kind of like what I was showing you. What you didn't see in the previous slide is that you can click on a building. Let's see whether I've shot myself in the foot trying to do this demo. Not do it. I have to revert back. Let me again. Okay. Because we are all let me just find this again. You can see our workspace completely. For the sake of transparency, it's not a problem on our end. So here we go. Okay, so here you can click on individual buildings, and the data that we've got loaded is data from OpenStreetMap. So you can click on individual buildings, and you've got the kind of tag for that building. It shows you, and then it shows you what amenities there are within a walking distance. And for this, we picked 750 meters, but we can play with that. So there is one playground within 750 meters, and it shows you where it is. There is one nursery within 750 meters, 5 restaurants, which makes sense because it's in kind of like a high street. And then on the reverse, going to the heat map, which you saw on my slides, there you get the heat maps calculated for every single building. So a lot of the 20-minute neighborhood analysis has a radius, so it starts from a center. Which means that potentially the buildings, properties, people living on the periphery miss out on any kind of policies that decide to do anything about those kinds of calculations. So what we think is important is to run those kinds of accessibility analysis for every properties in a given area. And here you'll see, for instance, for all the buildings in Keynsham, in this place, there are only 12 that have access to 2 nurseries within a 750-meter walk, and there are over 2,000 that have access to 1, but there are 7,000 who have access to no nurseries within a 750-meter walk, which we thought was kind of like a nice, like nice distance to walk to a local amenity. And then we can run the same analysis for GPs. And here it shows you the purple buildings are the ones with the best accessibility. And then restaurants brings up more colors just because there are more options. So all the buildings in red are buildings that have access to 5 or more restaurants. And there are 448 of those buildings. So this is one kind of one part of Skyline, and then the other part is scenario testing. So if you go on scenarios here, basically this is the version of the world you can play with and you can run scenarios on. So for instance, if you click on this building and it shows you that it's Poundland, let's imagine that Poundland becomes vacant and we want to add a change. And here we've only got a number of options, but the number of options could be well, pretty much unlimited, but let's change Poundland to a doctor's. And then we're going to run the analysis again and see how that impacts accessibility for properties to doctor surgeries. So it's increased the number that have got access to 2 GPs. So given more choice to about 720, well, not about, to 727 buildings in Keynsham. And you can do that. You can run the analysis again. So you can say, okay, let's change Poundland to I don't know well, let's put a nursery. I was going to put a playground, but that is really getting into the realm of the unrealistic. And then we are running the analysis again, and then here it shows you that suddenly you've got 662 buildings, you've got additional walking access to a nursery. So the idea is that you can kind of start testing options, be maybe a bit more creative about how you could turn an empty property, what you could turn an empty property into, but also based on your understanding of what the current need is. And we're doing this on buildings, but we could do this on sites. So if you had brownfield land data or vacant sites data, we could put it in, and then you could run the same kind of analysis. We can change the distances. We can pull in empty homes data. So yeah, there's lots that can be done. So let me just go back to my slides so I can finish the presentation. Sorry, I've been jumping around everywhere. I just wanted to give you a feel for kind of how Skyline works. Skyline does come with preloaded data. As I mentioned, we use OpenStreetMap data as the kind of like base data. We've got census boundaries, which we've got preloaded into it. We use GTFS data to give us the public transport data and elevation. But we can also pull in other data sets like EPC, empty homes data, etc., just depending on the use case, so long as they're in a kind of standard GIS format. And we can also export data from Skyline to use in other systems. So if you're very comfortable with your own mapping systems, or have invested in some other mapping systems, but that haven't got the ability to do this kind of scenario testing, you can download the Skyline data sets and pull them into your own systems. So very much designed for interoperability, and also designed for easy sharing and collaboration. So the idea is that when you run an analysis, you use the URL and share it with a colleague or partner, client, etc., and they can see the same thing. So that's very much kind of how we feel this tool should work. And where we're at now, so I've shown you Skyline, and it's still, I suppose, in a better version. So it's not fully finalized, ready to be kind of sent out into the world commercially. So what we're looking for is for organizations to test it and give us feedback, so that then we can kind of like launch it fully as a commercial product. So yeah, if anybody on here is interested in testing it and or finding out more, just please let me know, and we can have that conversation as well. And thank you very much. Let me know if you've got any questions or drop anything in the chat.
Thank you very much. That's extremely inspirational, and it's firing off lots of ideas for potential applications for me. Any questions from anyone? Andy, over to yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, it's very great watching this and everything that you can do from it. Be very interested, possibly kind of chatting offline from this. I'm the policy and projects manager for the partnership, and we deal with a lot of things around the data for empty homes and things around also data on age breakdowns in communities and things like that. So be interested how much that could be used to maybe kind of map out exactly where empty homes are and how that sits, for example, with declining population. Could we use it to show what's happened to population over a few years, and whether the facilities in an area match up with what the age of the population is? Are those things that you think are potential sort of things that can be developed through this?
Yes, absolutely. So it kind of depends at what level of granularity or what level of granularity your data around aging population has. But we can pull in any type of kind of demographic data, really. At the trial level, there's because they are kind of like free trials, we can only commit so much time to data that's not kind of like ready packaged to go to building level, but certainly we can do that. And actually we've done that with really sensitive population data using a synthetic population approach, which is basically putting like a privacy enhancing layer onto NHS data, which is to do with basically trying to understand if you were to develop facilities that serve people with chronic illnesses, where might you put them based on where you know those people live? And obviously that data is highly sensitive, but if you create a kind of fake population using privacy enhancing technologies, then it gives you a really good idea of where that population is and where those locations might be. So you can do it down to that level, but you can also do it you know, based on kind of like census information, which is, you know, publicly available, and that gives you a good enough idea and understanding where facilities are. So absolutely, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the information we have is kind of National Records of Scotland information, so sort of publicly available, and it sort of breaks it down at a kind of community level. So it won't tell you the specifics of what age in what house, but it gives you that breakdown over an area. So yeah, I'll won't take up too much more of your time now, but definitely get in touch outside of this.
Brilliant. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Thanks, Sam. Hi, Veronica. My name's Barbara. I'm the Empty Homes Officer here in Inverclyde Council on the west coast of Scotland. Just a very quick question. Your presentation was really good, thanks. We've just carried out a GIS mapping exercise. We have a GIS kind of coordinator here within our local authority and can plot. However, I liked yours, the fact that it's maybe a bit like an AutoCAD drawing where you can turn different layers off and determine and look at different aspects quite quickly. What I just want to know was, from a council's point of view, on two-prong attack, probably. One, how do you get round the whole data sharing? Do you have a data sharing agreement that you look to share with the local authority if you're looking for them to provide you with empty homes data, i.e. council tax data? And also, what is the cost implication for a local authority to use your service?
On the data sharing agreement, that's a really good question. It's not actually, so it's not an issue we have, because we don't, the way you would be set up essentially is you would be given, the whole organization would be given their own logging in link to Skyline. So you've got your own access to Skyline, and you can put your own data on there. Especially if you've got a GIS officer who can do that, then we almost don't really need to get involved, and we don't have that data ourselves. So you can use it completely for your own purposes without us, because we don't keep data. So it would just be you guys customizing it for your own purposes. Some organizations don't have any GIS or like data science capability, and so we can help them ingest their own data. But it's not to say that but it's almost like someone virtually jumping on your machine and doing something, and then it doesn't, like, the data doesn't stay with us. The reason why I was talking about our work with Rachel Whale and the issue around sharing data is because we were running a pilot, and so we were kind of playing with that information, not that it was publicly available or anything, but I think the council were a bit more nervous about it being at that stage. It wasn't something that Rachel couldn't have her own link and pull in her own data. We needed to do that all for ourselves, if that makes sense. It was just a different stage of where the product was at. And then the cost, so at the moment there is no cost. At the moment we'd like people to use it for free to give us feedback, which might be a really nice way of testing it and seeing what you think. And then we're exploring different cost options for different organizations, so the kind of public and private sector. And what we really like at the moment is the idea that there's a single cost per organization, so you can have unlimited users. And we've had, I still think it's a good idea, but yeah, we've had different, we were quite interested in that kind of feedback as well. But yeah, so at the minute it would be completely free. And then the cost, we're exploring something around, I think it would add up to about, like in the ballpark of about £10,000 per year, but we also need feedback on that. So yeah, we're very much at the stage where any feedback and input is very valuable to us.
Great, thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
That's okay.
One advantage we have is that, you know, Rachel being part of our network, she could potentially feed back to the other officers on the procedures on their council side, you know, the data procedures they had to make it work. Any
And
further
actually, I'd say
questions?
that from a case study perspective, Rachel, so the CivTech agreement is certainly ours, and I think it's probably the same for other companies who work with CivTech, is that the sponsor organizations benefit from what's it called? A lifetime free access to whatever you build with them. So Rachel would be a really good one to kind of report back on like process, and there's no kind of like time defined pressure to that. So yeah, just putting that out there. That's Scottish Borders and SOSI just get to use it for free. So yeah, and it might be that if anyone on here works with SOSI and thinks, you know, I think you guys can access this tool, can we benefit from it too through working with you guys? We're open to those conversations.
Okay, so we still have interesting content to still get through. So, and we have our further question session at the end. So without further ado, I'll just pass over to the Scottish Futures Trust. Over to yourself, Mary.
Yeah,
So,
Mary first.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Donicky. I work in the Place Housing and Economic Investment team at Scottish Futures Trust. In a minute, my colleague Lynn Ward will present some work that she's been leading to measure the inclusive growth effects of infrastructure investment. But first of all, I wanted to set the scene for this work in the context of the Empty Homes Partnership. Scottish Futures Trust has been working with partners over the last 18 months to promote town centre living as an opportunity to improve the economic, the social, the environmental performance of our town and city centres. And one of the key opportunities that we think in this area is around the repurposing of empty and underused spaces, primarily above retail units, other commercial units, but we also think there's a real opportunity around redeveloping other empty buildings in our town and city centres, so civic commercial buildings and conversion to housing. So we've been doing a lot of work in this area over the last wee while. We've been running roadshows, looking at different options and opportunities. So in this specific area around repurposing assets, while we think that probably only a small number of these properties are likely to be former and now empty homes, we know that some councils are taking a much broader view of what empty spaces within their building, within their towns, and have had great success in some towns. So they're adopting, if you like, a combined approach to increasing housing supply alongside town centre regeneration. So with that kind of introduction, I'll pass to Lynn, who's going to present the Inclusive Growth Framework, which in our team in SFT, we're using to track the impact of town centre living and the effect that it's having on our towns and city centres. So thanks, Lynn.
Great, thanks very much, Mary. Morning, everybody. It's been very interesting so far, lots of fascinating presentations. So let me just firstly introduce myself, Lynn Ward from Scottish Futures Trust, and I lead on the infrastructure strategy team within SFT. And SFT, for those that don't know it, is Scotland's infrastructure centre of expertise. So it's actually owned by the Scottish Government, so it's an arm's length body of the government. There's lots of information on our website that you can learn more about us, but we do work across the infrastructure life cycle, so all the way from strategy and appraisal through to finance and all the way to delivery. We don't generally deliver actual infrastructure projects ourselves. We work with partners generally to do that. But before I go on to my presentation, also maybe just to clarify what is infrastructure, because I know we've got a UK audience here today, and in Scotland, our definition of infrastructure is incredibly broad. So in the rest of the UK, infrastructure is considered to be economic infrastructure like roads and digital and these kind of things. Whereas in Scotland, infrastructure is much broader and it covers economic, social and natural infrastructure. So a very broad group of assets that Scotland's interested in when it thinks about infrastructure. So I'm going to talk about one small project within that large bundle of activity that SFT is involved with. And we refer to it as an action research project. And what we're trying to do is understand, how does infrastructure support inclusive growth? And when I've got a minute, I'll put the actual definition of inclusive growth in the chat. But that is actually part of why we're actually running this activity. Very quick background. We did have an Infrastructure Commission for Scotland, and I was actually seconded to that. And one of the areas it was looking at was inclusive growth, and what is inclusive growth, and how do you understand it, and what is the role of infrastructure? And unfortunately, what we discovered is actually the background or the understanding of how infrastructure supports inclusive growth is really vague. We may all have an idea just now. If I was to ask all of you right now, how does housing support inclusive growth? I'm sure you would all give me quite a lot of answers to that. However, the reality is that we actually have very limited evaluation data. And why is that an issue? Well, at the end of the day, we have limited finances, both in the public and private sector. And if you're prioritising your investment and you don't entirely know how effective and how supportive a particular investment is going to be to some of your policy priorities, then obviously that undermines you being able to support those. So it's very important in terms of both appraising and prioritising that we fill this evidence gap of understanding how infrastructure, in what way does it support inclusive growth. And I should say again, for those who are less familiar, in Scotland, inclusive growth has been something we've been talking about pretty much since 2015, and it's very much a priority for Scottish Government. But you know, how we define it, etc., continues to be a bit of a tricky area. So there's 3 objectives which are detailed here on the screen. We want to fill that evidence gap, which is incredibly important, as I've just described. I and some other colleagues in SFT are working with colleagues in government around a new prioritisation framework. What does that mean? So how do we invest? How do we prioritise and support infrastructure across Scotland? What do we prioritise? How do we do it? On what basis? And this kind of evidence gap is really essential to fill in order to support that work. So, but the other component of this activity is sharing knowledge. We're not the only people who are interested in this. We're not the only people who have developed approaches to it. And I think we've seen that today. There's so many people working in very similar areas. And how do we collaborate in order to improve what we're actually doing for the benefit of the people we're working for? So I'm going to, unfortunately, I can't actually show you the dashboard. I will come onto that in a minute, but what I will talk about briefly is the kind of golden thread of the activity, what we've done so far, what it looks like, what it covers, and then just try and give you a bit of a touch point of a new dashboard that we're actually preparing, which is part of a website that will be full open source. You'll have full access to the framework without any cost, that will really fill that part where we're saying we want to share knowledge and we want to get the message out there about what we're doing and allow you to use it in such a way that hopefully it can improve your understanding of how your projects actually achieve inclusive growth objectives. So this is what we've done so far. I won't go into these in any great detail. I'm conscious we're running over a bit now, but there's various streams of work. Since 21-22, we've done other pieces of research to understand whether things had changed since the work of the Infrastructure Commission. We've developed the framework. We've then tested that with 15 projects, live projects in Scotland, covering various different types of infrastructure projects. So back to that economic, social and natural infrastructure definition. We've also, through those framework, we've created the baseline, i.e. where are these activities just now in terms of various metrics that we've developed, in order that over time, the idea is that this framework allows us to test the extent to which these projects support, improve infrastructure objectives. So it's an action research project that seeks through primarily quantitative data, but also a couple of qualitative additions to understand that picture. And this will continue on. So this project in many ways, okay, we have a framework that's been refined, working with projects, year one and now the baseline and year one data, but this is intended to go on for multiple years, and SFT is very much committed to supporting partners in bringing forward the data in order that over time we can certainly understand what infrastructure does. We have been working with 15 projects so far, and on the right hand side you can see all the town centre projects that Mary mentioned. Left hand side the the other projects. So 15 projects, this is actually slightly out of date now. But as you can see, both geographically and in terms of rural, urban, but also in terms of type of projects. We've got a harbour, we've got nurseries, we've got health centres and health facilities, as well as learning facilities. And so we'll get things that are very particularly sectoral focused, if you like. And then we have multiple projects, which is particularly in the context of the place projects that Mary is involved with, where you've got an interaction of lots of different infrastructure types. So obviously through using and supporting these projects to establish an inclusive growth framework that is unique to them, we're allowing them to understand what both help them to appraise what they're trying to achieve and over time evaluate, well, did we achieve those objectives that we set at the beginning? And all of that data, as I say, will come together to help us appraise and understand what does infrastructure do in the context of inclusive growth, so that when government is prioritising investment in the future, it's got a much clearer understanding of where money should go depending on what they're trying to achieve. And I should have said that actually the colleagues in the Scottish Government have been heavily involved in this project, particularly from the Office of the Chief Economic Advisor. I mentioned the golden thread, and this is how we try to describe the process of, okay, so what are you trying to achieve, and all the way through, how does this link back to Scotland's national performance indicators, which is our well-being framework for Scotland, and all the way through to the individual frameworks for each of the projects. So we've taken a capitals approach, and I think we've all seen lots of different interpretations of the capitals, but we've got economic, social, human, environmental capital. We've then considered some of the objectives that projects have in the context of the current infrastructure investment plan, which is Scotland's capital programme for infrastructure. And you can see there a whole host of priorities across these different capitals, with quite a bit of crossover for some of them. And then again, we have the wellbeing framework for Scotland, which is also known as the National Performance Framework, and we've got indicators there. Now, why is this important? Again, back to the fact that there's this prioritisation work going on within government, and it's really important, particularly in the public sector, that we can have line of sight back to some of the large policies and strategies at a Scottish Government level. And so when we're thinking about our infrastructure, we can say, well, this aligns with the priorities at that national level. But that's only the start of it. That's very much the kind of framing of the framework that we've developed. And that then takes us to the challenges, outcomes, and actual indicators for the infrastructure inclusive growth framework. So, and these are, as I say, are done very much at a project level. I'm going to really just skip over this very quickly. I'll just say that we have both short and long-term indicators. Conscious of time, you will get access to these PowerPoint slides, but there's very much a line of sight taking you from both short-term to long-term indicators. And this is the dashboard, just a screenshot of the dashboard, which I say hopefully in the next few weeks will be available for you to look at. And the dashboard just provides you with a kind of snapshot of the wider framework, but the website itself will allow you to access and download the full framework free of charge, free of cost, entirely for you to use yourself and adapt as you need, with a whole host of line of sight from objectives all the way through to possible indicators. So I just thought I would quickly, this is my last slide, but I think, so I don't know if you can see this, it's pretty small on my screen, but that dashboard allows you to search according to type of infrastructure, the type of capital, whether it's economic or social, an individual project, and this one shows Airdrie. The left-hand side shows you the indicator groupings, which are colour-coded, and then the actual indicators below it relating to those groupings. And again, you can download this. But considering we're interested in empty properties, what the right-hand side screen gives you a bit of a narrowing of focus down to one of the grouping of indicators around economic capital and residential properties, and you can see those indicators at the bottom of the right-hand side screen. So for those, particularly for those town centre projects, these are some of the data that they are capturing. So we've already established a baseline for some of those town centres. What, in the context of these indicators, what are the current, where are we currently in terms of the housing rank within that town centre? How many are we in terms of empty residential properties? And the idea is that over time, through the actual activity and the investment, that we would start to see a change or a shift in some of these indicators, a positive change showing that that investment has created change for the local people. So I think my key message really to you is we don't really know right now in many ways how infrastructure supports inclusive growth. We think we need to fill that gap, but we believe that there is very much a line of sight as to how we think infrastructure supports inclusive growth. So we've established this framework which people can use to help them both appraise currently what they're trying to achieve and how they might do that, but also over the long term, the data we're capturing will help us evaluate whether that understanding is true or not and allow us to refine our understanding in various different contexts. We've obviously got questions, but here is the details for us. You'll get it when it comes to you anyway, but I'm going to stop there, go back to Sam, and thank you very much for your time.
Can I just very quickly just add in at the end of it there, specifically in relation to town centre living and empty homes, our focus on the work that Lynn's doing, because Lynn's piece of work is a much bigger piece, but our focus on the town centre living aspect of it is about trying to understand whether specific investment in these towns are putting a lot of time and effort into removing empty homes and creating more town centre living in their places, is to understand whether that's attracting additional investment into the place and whether it's having wider impacts on the viability and the sustainability across those four capitals: economic, human, social, environmental, whether it's having wider effects on the place.
That's great, and yeah, I think we're growing to a more holistic tone to the presentations, aren't we, throughout the session? So thank you.